Are you really 12 and a half?
Listen, mister, it's your time. 15 minutes ain't long.
Over more than 20 years, Jodie Foster has created a series of indelible characters, from the child prostitute of Taxi Driver to the rape victim of The Accused. Tough, hard-pressed people who never fail to surprise you.
And I heard somebody screaming, and it was me.
They are women living on the edge. Even FBI agent Clarice Starling in Silence of the Lambs is in pain.
I went downstairs, outside. I crept up into the barn. I was so scared to look inside, but I had to.
Is there a Jodie Foster role? Is there a kind of character you're drawn to?
I suppose people would say that. Yes, I played characters that were vulnerable and that were weak or that were not necessarily educated, that were all these things, but that they were always survivors.
A lot of them are victims.
You know, female history is fraught with victims, and the truth is that if I only played Wonder Woman, it would just be a very false statement.
Foster knows firsthand about being a victim. At age 28, she has made more than 30 movies and won an Oscar. But she's also known as the woman John Hinckley was trying to impress when he shot President Reagan in 1981. A decade later, it's the one subject that still sends Foster running.
I was looking at some old footage regarding the Hinckley thing.
What she is talking about these days is her latest role as star and first-time director of Little Man Tate, a movie opening next month. It's the story of a 7-year-old genius who's trying to balance his extraordinary gift with his desire to fit in. Foster plays his working-class mother, Dee Dee.
You're the best thing that ever happened to me. So don't worry so much.
She says she was drawn to the story because in some ways it was so close to her own. A special child who knew she was different than other kids.
My concerns were a little bit different. That my concerns were grave, and that I was a little bit more introspective, and that I noticed things that other kids didn't want to notice. And that didn't mean that I didn't fit in with them, as in I was shunned out, but that I retreated.
Foster has been different from the age of 3, when she made her first appearance as the Coppertone Kid.
Get enriched Coppertone.
Don't be a pale-face.
By age 8, she had been in 45 commercials.
Our checkup, Jimmy only had 2 cavities, and I didn't have any.
How'd you do it?
We brushed with Crest now.
Oh, Jamie, I've got a great idea for our young visitor.
And acted in dozens of movies and television shows.
I'm 6 going on 7, Mr. Cartwright.
If there was any pattern, it was that she often played kids who were wiser, more sophisticated than their years.
Oh, boy, are you ever stupid!
Want to make it like this?
But nothing prepared the public for her remarkable performance at age 12 as the street-smart prostitute in Taxi Driver.
But you're the one that came into my cab. You're the one that wanted to get out of here.
Well, I must have been stoned.
Why? What do you mean? They drugged you?
Oh, come off it, man.
The Los Angeles Welfare Board tested Foster to make sure she wouldn't be psychologically scarred. But she says she just saw it as a good role.
I remember I came home to my mom and I said, you know, I've just never done anything like this, and this is really fun because it's not me, it's somebody else. And it was the first time that it had ever been asked of me to create a character.
Foster is one of those rare child stars who has made a smooth transition to successful adult actress. While many of her contemporaries have been in and out of trouble, she has just kept working.
I think I was raised with this absolute blind confidence about wanting to be artistically successful. And anything else that would get in the way of that, to me, was a waste of time.
And anything else getting in the way of that would be?
Well, ending up behind bars, I guess, would definitely get in the way of being artistically successful.
Part of the reason, she says, is her mother and manager, Brandy, who raised her 4 kids by herself after divorcing their father. Brandy steered Foster away from cute kid roles to develop as a serious actress. And Foster says they dealt with each other more as friends than mother and daughter. Whatever the reason, Foster says there was no teenage rebellion.
Well, we didn't have one of these relationships of, you know, well, you go to your room at 10 and you do this and you do that and you do that because I say so. You know, it wasn't like that, mostly because I was a fairly kind of system-oriented kid. And I liked system, you know, and I liked grades and I liked, you know, being on time and all this kind of stuff.
So when you went there at 10, she didn't have to tell you because you were already there?
Absolutely, yeah. Early, unfortunately. The anal compulsive child was totally early at all times.
Early also on the set,
Wait a minute.
where she showed up perfectly prepared and with strong opinions. One of her nicknames, BLT, Bossy Little Thing. Some of the directors who worked with you as a child say that you were a complete professional around the set, but that you were pretty strong-willed. You had a pretty clear...
Stubbornina?
Pardon?
Stubbornina?
Stubbornina? That you had a pretty clear sense of what you wanted, how things should go.
Yes, you have to have opinions. I mean, I don't want anyone on my set that doesn't have an opinion. If they don't have an opinion, then they don't have any imagination. I don't want them there if they're just going to like punch the button. Who cares?
Given her strong sense of how things should be done, it's no surprise that Foster eventually decided to direct herself. And for her first project, she chose to work with 8-year-old Adam Han-Bird, whose only acting experience was in his first and second grade school plays. What did Jodie tell you about how to act?
She'd say like, well, here you're really mad, so the expression could be like fierce. So you should like lift your eye or, you know, act mean or something like that.
Well, or I would say things like, don't move when you say this line. I mean, there's one line where she says, you ate without me?
You ate without me?
We could have dessert.
And he says, we could have dessert. I just wanted him to be entirely still with it because that's how comedy gets delivered.
Do you see any of yourself as a kid in Adam?
Yeah, the one thing that I see in him is this, he has this acute sense of concentration. He loves to concentrate.
And that was little Jodie, too.
Yeah. It wasn't just that I enjoyed it, it's that it was intoxicating.
Foster has been enjoying the intoxication of acting for years. And surprisingly, she says it's not the showy emotional scene she's most proud of, but small revealing moments.
Can you in any way prove to us that someone in that room, anyone, saw you struggling or heard you say no?
Her favorite scene in Silence of the Lambs is when the evil Hannibal Lecter pierces the core of her character's vulnerability.
He starts this kind of very elaborate, horribly persecuting, small and subtle discourse about who I am.
You know what you look like to me with your good bag and your cheap shoes?
And to make it even nastier, during the filming, actor Anthony Hopkins surprised Foster by suddenly imitating her accent.
But you're not more than one generation from poor wire trash, are you, Agent Starling? And that accent you've tried so desperately to shed, pure West Virginia. What does your father do? Is he a coal miner? Does he stink of the land?
She does something with her face which is so extraordinary. And you see several emotions playing at the same time. She's trying to be brave, she's trying to be clever and sharp to match Lecter's brilliance, and at the same time you can see she just wants to crumble and break into tears. And it's a wonderful performance, just that moment.
For all of Foster's ability to reveal the innermost thoughts of her characters, she is intensely private about her own life. She goes on the obligatory publicity tour to push a new movie, but makes it clear she views all those prying reporters and cameramen as the enemy. One of the things that you've always seemed to be looking for, self-consciously, is normalcy.
Yeah.
Why is that so important?
I don't know. I don't know. It's definitely plagued me.
I read stories that, you know, you have a crummy car and you love to have lunch in your car and you go, you know, you sort of revel in going out and picking up your dry cleaning.
Yeah, it's part of what makes me sane and part of what makes my life work.
All of which makes what happened to Foster in college so poignant. She put her career on hold in 1980 to go to Yale, hoping, at least for a few years, to be just another young woman.
And definitely when I was in college, I realized that I'd never really been around people my own age, particularly.
But her attempt to fit into college life was shattered when John Hinckley tried to kill the president. Back then, Foster put on a brave front, meeting with reporters.
I've spoken to the FBI, the Secret Service, my family, my friends.
But now that part of her life is closed off. Did the events of March of '81 make that impossible to lead the life of just another co-ed?
No, I don't talk about it. And mostly for, anything that's ever had to be discussed about it has been discussed before, so it's not really anything that I ever talk about.
In fact, asking Foster about anything personal is like walking through a minefield of what she will and won't discuss. For instance, the issues raised in her new movie about a single mother bringing up a young son.
From now on, I'm going to take care of everything.
Would you like to have a child someday?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But I also don't have this very destructive biological clock that says, if I don't have one, I'll be a failure.
Is marriage part of the package?
Yes, possibly, and no, possibly. Yeah, yes and no. I don't know. All I know is that as the older I get, the more I can say I just don't know anymore.
What Foster is certain about after a quarter century in the business is that she's determined to deal with her celebrity strictly on her own terms. And she has people around who try to enforce those terms. When we were arranging this interview, we were given all sorts of warnings. We weren't allowed to talk about Hinckley. We weren't allowed to talk about your personal life. We couldn't talk to your mother. There were a lot of restrictions. Why so many restrictions?
My privacy is very important to me, and so that's a part of your interview as well, and that's a big part of me, and a big part of being two people, being a public person and being a private person. And anybody who's been a public person for long enough, which I have for 25 years, would be a fool and an idiot and an enthusiastic exhibitionist to not feel the same way.
You are someone who shares the most intimate emotions, the most personal thoughts with your audience. Can you understand why they would want to know, is that really her?
What about work?
Don't worry about work. All right, just try and get some sleep because you ain't been sleeping enough lately.
The way for me to tell a story is for me to give Dee Dee to you, or to give Clarice to you, in a way that is so true and real and honest. I give the world my work, and that's what I want to talk about.